Well, welcome. Hi, welcome to the third evening of our 50th anniversary screening series. My name is Alberto Zambenedetti, and I have the good fortune of being the director of the Cinema Studies Institute. Before we proceed, I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Senecas, the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. So I wish to thank the colleagues that have made this series possible. At Innis College, Ian Logan, Sean Rogers, Megan McDonald, Ben Westrate, Shayla Anderson, and Charlie Kyle. At CSI, James Cahill, Corinne Columper, Bliss Lim, Tony Pai, and Denise Ng. And at Media Commons, Dylan Reixa, David Pasco, and Christina Stewart. For those of you who were not able to come to our first two screenings, let me give you a bit of context for this series. 2025 is a special year for the Cinema Studies Institute. It was in 1975 that the cluster of film courses taught at the University of Toronto since 1969 was granted the status of a college program. Cinema Studies was then housed officially at Innis College, where it has remained ever since. In 2007, the program saw its first status changed. It became an institute and first developed graduate programs for MA students in 2007 and then PhD students in 2013. Tonight's featured alumnus, Radheyan Simonpillai, was a member of the very first CSI Master of Arts cohort in 2007-2008. As the notable guests in this series show, CSI graduates have gone on to pursue careers in all corners of the profession, from the film industry to academia, from programming to criticism in Canada and abroad. By all standards, CSI has become one of the premier locations in the world to study cinema. The 50th anniversary series is meant to celebrate this long and storied history and the people who contributed to shaping it. But it's also an opportunity to think about the students who will join us in the future and whose careers we hope to launch. And for this reason, I invite you all to contribute by donating to our Cinema Studies Fund. And now to the main event. It is with great delight that I welcome back Radheyan Simonpillai, who was elected to screen for this series Punch Drunk Love, a 2002 American film written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Adam Sandler as a lonely entrepreneur with the social anxiety who falls in love with his sister's co-worker, played by Emily Watson. The film was a box office bomb, but it has become highly regarded in the interim and launched Adam Sandler's foray into non-comedic roles. I'll briefly introduce Rad and invite him to say a few words about the film. And after the screening, I'll also introduce Professor Nick Sammond, who will be in conversation with Rad. Radheyan Simonpillai is the film critic for CTV's national breakfast show, Your Morning, the pop culture columnist for CBC Syndicated Radio, and a freelance contributor to CBC Arts, The Globe and Mail, The Guardian, eTalk on CTV, Zoomer, and more. Rad is formerly the editor of Now magazine. He's a member of the Critics' Choice Association and the Toronto Film Critics Association. Please join me in welcoming Radheyan Simonpillai.
Hi, everyone. I don't have to bend for this, right? Can I just say, I'm on national TV every week, and I'm so nervous being in front of you guys, because I feel like this is the group that can call me on my bullshit. And this just feels like being back in school. So I'm totally like Adam Sandler's character right now. I'm really excited to be back here. Of course, especially to have this conversation with Nick Sammond, who, back in the day, he was up here teaching film history. I was in the seats where you guys are sitting. And also Nick being a champion of me when I was in this space, making sure that, I felt like I belonged in this space, making sure I got into that master's program and all that stuff. And we decided we're going to talk about a Paul Thomas Anderson movie because, he's basically my favorite filmmaker working today and, consistently makes the job that I do very interesting. And the reason why we chose Punch Drunk Love is because it's 90 minutes long. It's literally like the movie that we could fit in and have a conversation about it after. But also, Punch Drunk Love was never really my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie, but it's a movie that I keep hearing from other people like that they love it the most, and that fascinates me. And I hope that in talking about it and unpacking it after the movie, I could grow to appreciate that perspective more. So, without further ado, let's watch Mashrab.
I wanted to ask you something because you're a doctor, right?
Yeah.
I don't like myself sometimes. Can you help me?
Barry, I'm a dentist.
Hi, this is Georgia.
This is Barry Egan.
So what do you do, Barry?
I have my own business. We have a non-breakable handle. Let me demonstrate for you.
You're married, aren't you?
No.
Barry, that's your sister.
There's this friend of mine from work, and I want you to meet her. This is Lena.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you have a girlfriend?
No.
It must be weird for you to have so many sisters.
Actually, no. It's very nice.
Remember we used to call you gay boy and get all mad?
What's that?
We were calling you gay boy and you got so mad.
I saw your picture, and I really wanted to meet you.
What are you lying?
No. I didn't want to get too far along going out and be hiding something.
This is Barry.
Hey, it's Georgia.
How did you get this number?
I was wondering if maybe you could help me out with some money.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
You've just made a war for yourself that you can't afford.
I'm going to Hawaii on Friday.
Hawaii? I was thinking about going there.
Really?
I'm gonna start a collection of puddings and coupons that can be redeemed for frequent flyer miles.
That's insane.
This is Barry.
You canceled your credit card.
That's a bunch of bull! Get your supervisor on the phone!
Yeah.
What's your name, sir? You're sick.
No.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Are you threatening me?
Yes.
That wasn't good. You're dead. Ow.
And all at once I knew at once. I knew it me.
I have so much strength in me, you have no idea.
The day I died, I wonder why. I knew
I have a love in my life. It makes me stronger than anything you can imagine.
he needs me, he needs me, he needs me, he needs me.
I was just sharing that I haven't seen this in 20 years, and it's delightful. So I'm going to introduce Professor Nicholas Sammond, who will conduct the Q&A with Rad. Professor Sammond studies the political economy and cultural history of popular media. His most recent monograph is Birth of an Industry, Blackface Minstrelsy and the Rise of American Animation, which came out from Duke University Press in 2015, which explores the historical relationship between blackface minstrelsy, I'll never be able to say that right, and the origins of the American animation industry. This work includes a detailed online companion which features all the cartoons and historical texts discussed in the book, and I highly recommend clicking on the link in Professor Sammond's page on our website, because you'll be amazed at this interactive book companion. It's so much fun to play with. His award-winning previous book, Babes in Tomorrowland, Walt Disney and the Making of the American Child, 1930 to 1960, which came out in 2005, charted the circulation of concept of childhood through popular child reading and public relations and films of Walt Disney Productions. Professor Sammond is also the editor of the volume Steel Chair to the Head, The Pleasure and Pain of Professional Wrestling, which also came out from Duke in 2005. He has also created the Early Animation Wiki, a research tool developed in collaboration with the International Film Animation Society, and an animation research station in the Innis College Library, which offers access to thousands of rare film shorts, original artwork, and biographical and bibliographic information on animators and animation studios. His current research project involves a detailed historical study of fluid objection in Cold War comic books, comics, and animation. Please help me welcome Radheyan Simonpillai and Professor Nicholas Sammond.
Thank you all for sticking around, and thank you for coming out tonight. Rad and I are just going to have a conversation for a few minutes, and then I'm hoping that there are a few questions out there or comments. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see all of you, because at the moment you're blissfully blurry to me. There we go. Oh, hello. Rad, you and I, we talked a little bit about this before we watched it again, and we had two very different approaches to it, two different takes. My fascination with this film in particular, or the work of Paul Thomas Anderson in general, has to do with his recurring fascination with the San Fernando Valley. And I find it fascinating partly because it's the birthplace of much of what we think of as Hollywood, or at least where a lot of the nuts and bolts of it get done. And because it's where, and probably the obvious biographical fact, this is where he was raised as a child. But it's this kind of void out of which comes strangeness for him on the regular. And in this film in particular, it manifests itself as Happy Gilmore as a plunger salesman. So there's this strange turn in which Adam Sandler, we get to see the darker side of Adam Sandler and realize it's always been there anyway, even if we were not paying attention to it. Do I need to speak up? Okay, sorry. I just don't want the feedback to overwhelm you, so I'll try to be a little bit more careful. You, on the other hand, intimated to me, that's very loud, isn't it? I've got to find a middle ground in there somewhere. That P.T. Anderson was very important in your formation as a cinephile.
Yeah.
Want to say more about that?
Yeah. So, can I just speak to your approach for a second? Just because, I think, just kind of unpacking that further, I feel like PTA is one of the first filmmakers people talk about where he he showed a love for the San Fernando Valley, whereas I think in the 80s movies it was very much oh, the valley and stuff like that, right? And so there's that aspect to why he kind of felt new, but also actually Adam Naiman, who by the way wrote the book on PTA, is over there, and I was talking to Adam just last week, and we were talking about, you mentioned that when this movie won the directing prize at Cannes, David Lynch was the head of the jury. And I think it's interesting that this happens, I think, the year after David Lynch made Mulholland Drive, and that's very much about this divide between Hollywood and the San Fernando Valley, and the San Fernando Valley being this kind of alienating space and all that. Also, then if you look at Licorice Pizza, where it's almost entirely about how the Hollywood, San Fernando Valley's Hollywood adjacent. So I'm definitely very fascinated with that approach to it. But for me personally, so the thing was, I've always had this deep love for Paul Thomas Anderson because he's essentially the filmmaker, the hot shit filmmaker as I'm growing up. And at every stage of my life, he's almost kind of making a movie that really tapped into me. So basically, when he made Boogie Nights, I was 15. The man made Goodfellas with porn. How can I not love that, right? And then Magnolia comes out. I'm 17 then, right? And it's all of a sudden, as I'm developing a taste for different kinds of film. I mean, this is this very virtuosic filmmaker film with it's epic. It's imposing all this meaning on you. Though now when I look back at it, it's not all that meaning. It's not all that meaningful. It's just a bunch of signifiers all over the place. And as I continue growing, as I came then to school here, as I'm developing my film taste, as I'm broadening, my understanding of film lexicon, then comes this movie, which is all French New Wave. He's changing up his influences. It's no longer Scorsese, Altman Demi. It's now, Jacques Tati and all that stuff. And when I became a film critic, that's when, or right as I was becoming a film critic, that's when There Will Be Blood, The Master, all of these things are coming out. The Master is my favorite movie now of the last 30 years. And that's at that point, that's when it's okay, I'm all in on PTA with that film. And so in a way, I look at PTA's career as this is a guy whose career or his filmmaking style was maturing alongside my own film taste. So that's kind of the relationship I have there.
Okay, great. Let's just start off with a question or two, and then we can throw it to the audience, perhaps. Why Popeye?
I would love to ask the people in this audience that question, right? So obviously we're referring to that song, the He Needs Me song that's from Popeye. Look, when I think of that moment, the Altman references throughout his career, that's the one that kind of carries over into this film. But also, I don't know. I don't have it. It's interesting when you think of what is in that song, this idea of the fantasy woman, that this movie the fantasy woman that comes into his life to heal him. This is like, I mean, PTA, if you look up throughout his entire career, he's got it's this very male perspective, these anxious males who are, the chaos of the outside world is kind of reflecting what's going on inside. And it's interesting when you look at this movie as like this kind of, the female character is kind of thin. She's like an angel that comes in, kind of heals his life. And so this song comes in and it's like, I guess professing her, like her, what her function is. He needs me, but from her perspective. And it's interesting when you think of like how that even works in kind of some of his later films. If you look at Phantom Thread, right, that song, He Needs Me, like that's also kind of the way the female character in that film thinks of her relationship to the Daniel Day-Lewis character. So I don't have an answer to why Popeye, but certainly that's what I think about when I think back on that song.
Well, I think the one thing is that we can open up to the audience is like, how do we feel about the way he deals with gender throughout his films? But one thought that I had during this is that, is she olive oil to his Popeye, to Adam Sandler's Popeye? Because he becomes a
superhuman,
man. A man. When he's filled with her love, right?
Yeah,
When
and she gives his anger purpose. Right, or like he can actually control his anger and whatnot and use it to like, I mean, like again, I don't know if these are kind of dated ideas, but when it's like when all of a sudden this idea of manliness is where you can control your strength and stand up for people, but also, like that's, I see that.
Or in this case, control your psychotic rage.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Can we like speak for a second about the sisters?
Right. They're not great. But I mean, again, I think like that when you talk about like kind of the gender, like the way he represents women, it's like, so we have these tyrannical sisters. I think you said they were like the evil stepsisters.
Yeah, there's a fairy tale feel to them.
Yeah. All right. So you either have the evil stepsisters, you have the sex worker, the phone sex operator. They're all like, shady women or women that are mean to him, and then comes the soft, patient, gentle type. I don't know. And then, do we see that recurring in his other films? I think here's the thing. Like, I'm always looking at this film in relationship to his other movies, right? Because if you think of his trajectory, it's like you start with again like the Scorsese, the Altman homages, but then they're so unwieldy. They're so they're so showy. I look at this movie as kind of like, when we chose this, I mean, I was being glib when I said we chose this just because it's 90 minutes, but that 90 minutes is purposeful, right? It's like, this is a contraction in his career where he made this 3-hour movie that was way too long, where he just threw everything at the screen and he really wanted to show you what he's doing. Then he makes a 90-minute movie and he's showing a lot more control as a filmmaker. But not only that, if you're looking at all of his movies, like, there's a lot, like, I think all of them deal with like these anxious males, these men who can't control their emotions, these men who are like responding in the worst ways to kind of feeling alienated or whatnot. That's kind of a through line in all of his movies with Boogie Nights, Magnolia. It exists here. It's contracted. It's more controlled in terms of his filmmaking, and then he expands out, and all of a sudden that same male anxiety, he puts it out against history. He broadens his horizons in terms of how he thinks about that, and he's thinking about it in the oil boom of the 1920s, and then in The Master and post-war America. So that's what I mean where I feel like then he matures as a filmmaker, and he kind of comes outside of his own kind of like just like writing his own emotions on the page, where he can really contextualize it and think about it on a bigger canvas. Where do we begin with this?
The sisters.
The sisters. Oh yeah. So the sisters. So I mean, so again, all right, so what I was saying was like, I mean, it's interesting to look at Punch Drunk Love as this transition moment, as this moment where you see a lot. Like, so my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movies is like The Master, Inherent Vice, Phantom Thread. Those are the 3 movies that I think are just like, above all everything else. And you see so much of the stuff in those movies in Punch Drunk Love, which is why I find this like a fascinating movie to revisit, because it is that moment where he's kind of shifting gears as this filmmaker, and he's trying new things, and I think again he's maturing. And so, you know, when like we referenced the female perspective of Phantom Thread in this character, we could even look at Licorice Pizza and this kind of this portrayal of the San Fernando Valley, the male rage of Adam Sandler in the Freddie Quell character in The Master. I don't know where the sisters fit in that. So the sisters, I mean, I'm trying to think of like kind of like these women that terrify him. That's kind of there in The Master, right? With the Amy Adams character. But like, so I'm kind of fascinated with in terms of like where that the evils, the stepsisters or whatnot, where that kind of lays out in the rest of his career.
Okay, I mean, maybe we can open that up to the audience about that when we talk about gender. Before we do that, not yet. Color, blue and red.
Yes.
What's going on there?
Was that reference to masculine, feminine, right? I mean, this is like right, like because all of his reference points here. I mean, again, umbrellas of Cherbourg, masculine, feminine. What is? Oh, the plot is shoot the piano player, right? Relifted from that. So I mean, there's that. And also, didn't Bertolucci play with blue and red like that too?
I don't know.
The conformist, right? So like. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting where he's got this nice little controlled aesthetic, and it's like it shows up not just in the outfits they're wearing, but in the lighting design whenever they walk out into the street and stuff, and yeah, like that to me, it's interesting because like we talk about Punch Drunk Love as the movie where he like is starting to grow into his own filmmaker, and this is what when I say like people. Constantly say that this is their favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. This is the one they say that this is the one where it's like completely his own movie. Like it's like all of a sudden the Paul Thomas Anderson is coming out. He doesn't feel like a slave to other filmmakers, and yet he does. It's kind of like it's entirely French New Wave.
So I would like to throw this question to you, and then we'll throw it to the audience. Did anybody notice when he's first gathering up the pudding? In the supermarket, the red figures in the distance. Yeah. What did you guys make of that?
Like there is a balance between energy more than a representation of. Because at the beginning I was like, you have like this character and then you have sources of passion. I thought that was red. Then when you see it like being repeated throughout, you see it in the supermarket multiple times. I even thought it was like she that was on the back at some moment because it was a female figure, but there was also male figures walking and they were in red. So I think that like there is a balance of energies in general, not more representative. It's him and the world, and then when he relates with her, he starts belonging. As he said, he doesn't understand people. He's different than people. He puts himself in that place in which he doesn't know how people are, but then he gets with this red that I think that it symbolizes like people, energy, and he being different. But that's me.
Well, the world does become more blue and red around them as they get together, right? Yeah.
But it's also interesting because there's the older man behind him in the background, and then it switches to the woman, and he actually turns and looks at her. There's that moment, yeah. Are there questions or comments from the audience? Even like the people who like they stuck around because they just didn't like the film and they needed to say something about it. Oh, here comes Adam.
Can you guys talk about phones? I think it's interesting to talk about phones and the fact that this movie exists at maybe the last possible moment that like it didn't have to be a cell phone. And it's also the most contemporary movie he's ever made, even though it's 20 years old, because everything after this is a period piece.
Right.
So maybe fun to just talk about phones, because when I was watching it this time, I was just thinking about the phone all the time.
It's interesting because it's like, in a way, this was a period piece in 2002, where it's looking at 1999, but by 2002, we all had cell phones, right? And 99 is that one moment. I mean, I had a cell phone in 99, but I think it was for the most part, most people didn't. So, and you don't see a single cell phone in this movie. And yeah, I mean, like, I think phones are, like, I mean, it's such they have a huge presence in this movie when you consider, like, like the fact that he gets in trouble through a phone sex operator, the moment where he tries to give that guy his home phone number, you know, the on the business call and stuff, right? It's like his connection to the world through phones. I don't know entirely what to make of it, but it is, of course, I think the big punchline is where he finally disconnects the code and takes the phone and takes it with him to face off against the mattress man. Feels like it's cutting an umbilical cord of sorts.
Well, he does it twice, right? Because he also takes his cordless phone into work with him. Like he carries it all the way with him to work.
Right.
That one time. Did you have your hand up, sir?
I want to ask a question about the creative process. Someone gets this idea. Someone gets this idea to put together this structure of a film about this character and his interaction with this young lady. And they're working on the script. It's all before they start to roll the film. At what point does someone in that group say, the character is Adam Sandler, and we're going to mold this script to fit him and make the movie work around him? I'm just intrigued by the interaction between the development of the script and the concept idea and the selection of the actor who's going to implement it.
I think it was built around Adam Sandler.
He actually wanted to make a film with Adam Sandler. He said he wanted to make a 90-minute film with Adam Sandler, which gave us the length.
Yeah.
Actually, so
and specifically, not just, I mean, he wanted to make an Adam Sandler movie. Like he didn't want this. He didn't want to take Adam Sandler out of his element. He wanted to make. I mean, like what Adam Sandler is doing here is not all that different from what he does in his kind of explosive SNL skits or Billy Madison and whatnot, where it's like he could be this like soft whatever guy, and then all of a sudden he explodes into these temper tantrums. So he basically, he wrote this movie. Yeah, he built this movie entirely around that persona, but then made it French New Wave.
But is that common in the creative process, that at some point in the development of the script and the idea for the film, they picture an actor who's going to make this role and make this idea real? Is that, I'm just intrigued by the interaction between the players and the creative force that puts the idea of the movie together.
I mean, I'm not a filmmaker, but I would say that we've heard different versions of when an actor comes in and totally changes what a movie is, and right.
Yeah, I'd say in this case, the way I would look at that is, I don't know if it's common, but it indicates that at that moment he had enough say in the creative process that he could say, I want to make a film with around Adam Sandler, and he would get the financing for it. So you have to hit a certain stage in your career where you actually have the wherewithal to get people to get behind an idea like that.
Yeah. I mean, just to jump on that though, I mean, I also think that, like, first of all, when I talk about those transitions in his career or whatever, right? This feels like the movie where he lightens up more, like Paul Thomas Anderson as a filmmaker, right? Where he's willing to be more goofy. I mean, he's tapping into like Adam Sandler's comedic instincts. He's doing more. I mean, there's comedy in all of his movies, but of course, like there's the Jerry Lewis influence here and all that stuff. And again, like when you think about like, when I look at Magnolia, there's something very punishing and like, you know, grim about it. You know, when you get to, you know.
I find a Rain of Frogs hilarious.
Yeah, I find that hilarious too. Yeah, but you know, like it's like he really wants to hit you hard with the emotional, you know, like with the crying Tom Cruise, and I feel like his later movies, like he's willing to have more fun in the climaxes. He's willing to be more like just lightened up, and Punch Drunk Love, but being the like kind of the sweetest ending, like, you know, that's where that begins.
I guess, I mean, you and I talked about this earlier where I said, I think that if you go back to Boogie Nights, Boogie Nights is hilarious until it isn't.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's actually really funny and it isn't. Yeah, in the back.
Throw that mic out. I can hear you, but it's not through the microphone.
Not really a question, but really appreciate that this is on, because I always loved Paul Thomas Anderson, but just because of my age or whatever, I never got a chance to see them all in a theater. So it was really nice to see this, and I forgot how funny it was. It was a good, introspective look on Paul Thomas Anderson's film catalog, and seeing where Adam Sandler got his first serious role. I thought this would be a funny double feature with Uncut Gems. Just seeing them back to back and seeing it, similar energy, and I just really had a good time. Thanks for doing this. And Yeah, that's all really.
Our pleasure.
And Adam Naiman, shout out to Big Picture.
And I feel like the Safdies probably saw this performance before, you know, like, and then like we're, you know, like took a lot of inspiration from this when they cast him in Uncut Gems, right? Sorry.
Curious what your thoughts are on the wide pan while he's sitting at the table waiting for the call back. The wide pan when he comes back from, or he's waiting for the call from the saxophone operator.
Yeah.
And it pans way out, like noticeably. Just curious your thoughts on it and significance.
There was like, I was kind of thinking about the movement in that scene in general, right? Because it's almost like the camera's always trying to keep up with him. Like he's such an anxious figure that like he's always kind of walking out of the frame and the camera kind of recenters on him and stuff. And then like when it pans away from him, I don't know if that's also just kind of reflecting this anxiety, like kind of leaving him alone. And oh wait, does it pan away when at the end of the call, like kind of giving him his privacy? Oh, it pans away, yeah. I mean, what do you think? Yeah, emotionally, I feel like that camera work is like kind of often reflecting that.
Yeah, I would say pretty much the same thing, is that we get a lot of kind of wide shots where he's stuck in a corner. We begin with him kind of in shadow in a corner, and then so you get a sense of him as isolated, self-isolated in a lot of ways, and then he's constantly kind of struggling against that. And, you know, then when he gets together with Lena, you get the close shots that indicate a shift to a certain extent, would be the way that I would read it. But there's just a lot of time where you have just a lot of room to see him in the frame and watch his discomfort. I mean, we get multiple angles to watch his discomfort from, and I think that's one where you really feel his isolation would be the way I read it.
Yeah. And I mean, as the movie progresses, like he holds the center a lot more, like, and the camera stays like is steadier, right? I mean, and I think especially when you get to that confrontation with Philip Seymour Hoffman, where he's the most still he's ever been in this movie, right?
I was also thinking about the pan, like it kind of reminded me of what, when Scorsese was making Taxi Driver, like that scene where he has the really uncomfortable phone call and he pans out to the hallway because it's almost like it's too shameful to see what he's doing. So that might be another. I was also thinking that this is kind of the first movie, I mean, like in his later filmography, so like Phantom Thread and certainly Licorice Pizza, like this was kind of the first movie he made that's kind of like about relationships in a way. Like he started to become more interested in relationships, Inherent Vice a little bit too, like as it went on, and these relationships that are like dysfunctional but right. Like there's a lot of stuff in this relationship that you kind of expect her to bolt from the date or whatever, but they kind of work, even though it's weird, and I feel like that's a theme that he kind of touched on as he went on.
Is it because he actually lives in the relationship as opposed to like with Magnolia, it's all like these little tiny...
Well, yeah, like it's vignettes, I guess, and like his earlier.
But I mean, like, shit. But no, I mean, when I think back at Magnolia, like, are they? I guess like that you just made me wonder. Like, are they vignettes or are they like I mean, sorry, are they vignettes? Are they relationships that we're watching, or are we always watching just people kind of like in their own anxiety, and they have these small interactions with other people? But you don't really have like kind of a sustained relationship developing. I'm trying to think if there's ever a sustained relationship developed with anyone.
I meant more romantic relationships specifically, but yeah.
I don't entirely know that this is a relationship. Also, I got to say, because the whole thing strikes me as a fairy tale. She's the princess who appears and is going to lift him out of his gloom or his whatever, his Sandlerian angst, for want of a better term. But she doesn't strike me as particularly real any more than any of the other characters in the film strike me as particularly real in that sense. Doesn't mean it's not a relationship. It's just it's a kind of fantastical one. You know, the whole chase sequence when he's being chased by the four brothers has this very like Snow White in the forest feel to it, where he's like feels very animated at that moment. That sense of like this is more of a fairy tale than it is a real story, even though it's more grounded than Adam Sandler ever has been up to that point, I guess was what I'd say. And yes?
In my point of view, I really relate to the headline of the movie, the Punch Drunk Love. The movie
I would agree. What would you say about the punch drunk part of the love, though?
The punch is like, for me, he's like almost like Joe, like anti-hero. He's like not being, like all the time you say, I said to myself, he'll never get a good ending. He'll never have a happy ending. Every time he comes over and he falls down. He gets to the knowledge and he falls down. He finds the girl and he drops the ball again and again. He goes to the hospitals and his craziness is taking all over him. Eventually, he's getting the redemption and you're happy. So that's fairy tale. Hadn't been that happening, it wouldn't be.
You know, when we keep talking about this as a fairy tale and her being kind of this fairy tale figure, again, I can't help but just always just connect these things back to his other movies, and I think of but Inherent Vice, and the way Shasta Faye exists in that movie, where she's kind of like also a fantasy figure, but it's a dark and twisted fantasy. It kind of conjures up the horror stories of what it means to make her a fantasy figure.
She's kind of apparitional in that movie.
Yeah. I think, I mean, like she doesn't exist in any other space. I mean, there's two women in that movie, like her and Sortilege, the hippie that's always talking, and they don't necessarily exist because they're not in any actual scenes of consequence to the story.
Which may say something about P.T. Anderson's relationship to women characters.
Well, didn't he make this after his breakup with Fiona Apple?
You got me there.
Actually, can I
Adam? I guess you would know.
Yeah. Actually, you know, little bit of Toronto lore here. So, Toronto Film Critics. They actually, like the Toronto Film Critics Association, before I was a member, before myself or Adam were a member, they named Magnolia the best picture of 1999. And so this is like kind of like the biggest point in history for Toronto Film Critics, for the Toronto Film Critics Association's history. Is like, back then we didn't have this big fancy awards gala that we have now, with all the ceremony and pomp. It was just literally like they named their awards, and they would have dinner at the back of an Italian restaurant, and Paul Thomas Anderson and Fiona Apple showed up to that dinner to just hang there with all the Toronto film critics. So I always thought that was kind of a fascinating, like his connection to Toronto. Also, I understand that rumor has it he Skyped into a class here once.
I think I'm the oldest member of the faculty present, and I don't remember.
So it's just
that.
a rumor? Okay.
It could have happened.
It's true. There you go.
I can't remember whose class that was. Do you remember?
Yeah. But so PTA's connection to Toronto is deep. Sure.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up. I've prevailed upon Rad to share his fanboy moment in relation to this particular director.
Well, okay, so remember I said throughout basically my life, he's basically been making movies that were like my favorite movie of all time in that moment, right? And so remember that Punch Drunk Love is coming out in the after, like a few years after Magnolia, and at that point I'm like, now like I don't love Magnolia the way I did back then, but I deeply love Magnolia. So I went to the TIFF premiere of Punch Drunk Love. And I went to that TIFF premiere with my Magnolia DVD in hand, and so this is what I did as a film fan back then. I used to go to TIFF premieres and then get my favorite filmmakers to sign my DVDs, and it was such chaos because Adam Sandler's there. This is at the Uptown Theater, which doesn't exist anymore. And I remember when they're leaving, they had security had to block us off. So I literally leaped from the balcony, did some movie stars, leaped from the balcony down to the bottom floor to get where the security wasn't blocking it, so I could run out to the lobby and get PTA to sign my Magnolia DVD. As I run out there, Adam Sandler stops, thinking I'm chasing him. I'm like, no, I'm not here for you. I'm for him. And I should have brought that DVD. I still have that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you all.